In 1981, one of Hollywood's biggest stars vanished from a yacht, only to be found floating in the ocean hours later. The official story never made sense, leaving countless questions unanswered. We'll expose the forgotten details and reveal the compelling evidence that points to foul play. Get ready to dive deep into a true crime story that Hollywood tried to hide. We discuss the highly controversial drowning of Natalie Wood, a story so full of strange coincidences and conflicting testimony, it reads like a classic Hollywood script. Get your sunglasses ready, because this one is packed full of bright stars and dark secrets. On November 29, 1981, at about 7:30 a.m., Natalie Wood's body was found floating face down in the Pacific Ocean, around 200 yards off Catalina's Island's Blue Cavern Point. She was wearing a flannel nightgown, blue wool socks, and a red down jacket. It was a bizarre and tragic scene that instantly captivated the public. Before we get into the grim details of the scene, let's establish what led up to that point. Who was Natalie Wood? Natalie Wood was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood up until her untimely death. Her career began at the tender age of 4 when she appeared in Happy Land. By age 8, she had secured her breakout role as the skeptical Susan Walker in the Christmas classic, Miracle on 34th Street. It's a role that cemented her as a child star, but also one that set the stage for a lifetime of pressure. She transitioned seamlessly from child star to teen idol with roles in Rebel Without a Cause opposite James Dean, which earned her a Golden Globe. This was followed by iconic performances in West Side Story and Gypsy. As an adult, she was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. She was a powerhouse, a fixture of American cinema. But behind the silver screen success, her life was shadowed by personal struggles and a deep-seated fear. Eerily, from her early childhood, Wood's mother was said to have filled her with a fear of dark water, as a fortune-teller had once prophesied that she would die of drowning. This wasn't just a fleeting superstition, it was a deep-rooted phobia that followed her throughout her life. In a chilling incident from when Wood was 10 years old and filming The Green Promise, a bridge rigged to collapse threw her into the water, despite her mother assuring her it would be safe. Wood broke her wrist and was left even more terrified of water. As a child, she had such a phobia of water. It is said she was afraid to wash her hair and had recurring nightmares about drowning. The irony and tragedy of her ultimate fate are hard to ignore. Wood's personal life was just as dramatic as her film roles. On her 18th birthday, she went on a date with actor Robert Wagner, later star of the television series Heart to Heart, who was 26 at the time. Their relationship was a whirlwind. They married in 1957 but divorced just a few years later. Wood married and divorced another man later in her life, only to marry Robert Wagner once again in 1972. It was a complicated and passionate love affair, a testament to a connection they couldn't seem to escape. However, sources close to the couple said the second marriage was just as volatile as the first. The jealousy was a constant presence, a dark undercurrent to their glamorous life. Wood herself had said that she believed her feelings of torment were rooted in a feeling that she did not truly know herself, as people had told her what to do her whole life, including her mother. Pushing forward to more recent history of the incident, it was the weekend just after Thanksgiving of 1981. Wood had been working on the science fiction film Brainstorm with Christopher Walken at the time, and he was invited to join her and Wagner on their yacht, named the Splendor, that weekend. According to the captain of the boat, Dennis Davern, who had worked with the couple for years and considered himself a family friend, Wood had become infatuated with Walken during filming. Wagner has even flown out to where they were filming to make sure he wasn't going to make a fool of himself over this. But Wagner was not the only one with a jealous streak. Around the same time, reports say Wood was suffering from jealousy over Wagner's on-screen romance with his heart-to-heart co-star, Stephanie Powers. The stage was set for a tense and dramatic weekend. The group left on the yacht around noon on Friday, November 27th, about 2 days before Wood would be found dead. Everyone on the boat, including Captain Davern, had been drinking for much of the weekend. On that Friday night, Wagner and Wood argued to the point that Davern was concerned and asked Walken to get involved. Walken is known to have refused to intervene, saying, "Never get involved in an argument between a man and a wife." Davern ended up taking Wood ashore that night in the yacht's 13-foot inflatable dinghy, the Prince Valiant, and they slept at the Pavilion Lodge Hotel in Avalon. The next morning, Saturday, November 28th, they returned to the Splendor, where Wood apparently decided to stay for the remainder of the weekend based upon Walken's expressed desire to stay. Walken and Wood went ashore that afternoon to begin drinking at Doug's Harbor Reef, where they were later joined by Wagner and Davern. The party's waitress recalls that at dinner they consumed 2 bottles of wine, 2 bottles of champagne, and one of the men was also drinking daiquiris. She also recalls that Wood did not eat much of her dinner and that she did not seem to be in a good mood. When she left the restaurant, she appeared to be stumbling. In one moment, Wood was said to have thrown a glass down onto the floor, though Walken later explained the incident, saying that it was his fault because he threw his glass on the floor after making a toast, and Wood had just followed suit. Davern has said Walken and Wood seemed very flirty throughout the dinner. They boarded the dinghy to return to their yacht for the night at about 10 p.m. As they were boarding, a witness from the Harbor Patrol office said they heard Wood scream about something, which he assumed was just because she was drunk. Witnesses sleeping aboard a nearby boat, John Payne and his girlfriend Marilyn Wayne, reported hearing shouts at around midnight. Payne claimed to hear a woman yelling, "Help me! Someone, please help me!" coming from the near stern of the Splendor, and potentially from someone in a dinghy. He also believed to hear a man who sounded very drunk respond, "Okay, honey, we'll get you." But his tone was so mocking, he claims this is why he believed the cries were associated with a nearby party. Reports say there was a non-violent argument aboard the yacht soon before Wood disappeared. Wagner has said that he and Walken did have a political debate that he began at dinner, that they continued while aboard the yacht. He describes the event saying, "There was no fight, no anger." Natalie sat there not saying much of anything and looking bored. She left us after about a half hour, and we sat there talking for almost another hour. Then I went to kiss her good night and found her missing. At 1:30 a.m. that night, Wagner and Sea Captain Davern made a distress call to the Coast Guard saying that Natalie Wood had disappeared. About 6 hours later, the body of Wood was found floating about a mile away from the yacht. The Prince Valiant, the inflatable dinghy, was found washed up on the rocks, just a little further south. The ignition was off, the gear shift was set to neutral, and the oars were locked, which implies she may have never started the vessel. The coroner reported that she had drunk 7 or 8 glasses of wine before the incident. Her blood alcohol level was at least 0.14, and the police ultimately ruled her death as accidental. She also had superficial bruises on her arms and lower legs, as well as a cut on her cheek. Though at the time, these were all attributed to what might have naturally occurred as she fell into the water. With that, let's get into the theories. The first theory is that Natalie accidentally fell into the water and drowned. The conclusion drawn by the chief medical examiner in the LA County Coroner's Office, Thomas Noguchi, was that Wood had fallen into the water while trying to board the Valiant. Noguchi hypothesized that her down jacket had likely become heavy and soaked, and she never thought to remove it due to her inebriated state. Fingernail scratches found on the side of the Valiant show she tried to climb back aboard the dinghy. Ultimately, she likely finally drowned due to hypothermia and exhaustion. However, Wood's sister, Lana Wood, had this to say on the notion: "My sister was not a swimmer and did not know how to swim, and she would never go to another boat or to shore dressed in a nightgown and socks." Robert Wagner also said in a 1986 biography, "It was only after I was told that she was dressed in a sleeping gown, heavy socks, and a parka that it dawned on me what had really occurred. She probably skidded on one of the steps after untying the ropes. After slipping on the steps, she hit her head against the boat." Some have criticized this theory as the Valiant was a rubber dinghy, which, according to Noguchi, would make very little noise when they bump a yacht. Additionally, Noguchi reported forensic evidence, including the untouched algae on the swim step. It appeared that Wood may have been attempting to board the dinghy rather than adjust the rope. Police investigators also found broken glass in the Splendor's main salon, which Wagner attributed to the rough seas. However, it's here that the testimony of Captain Davern differs. He claimed that Wagner grabbed and smashed a wine bottle after going into a jealous rage over Wood and Walken's interactions. He claims Wagner exclaimed, "Jesus Christ, what are you trying to do, F my wife?" Strangely, despite blaming the rough seas at first, Wagner admitted to have broken the wine bottle that night in the salon in his autobiography in 2009. Davern has since said that he has always believed something malicious may have occurred to Wood, as he believes she would have never tried to go to shore alone and feels sure if she did want to return, she would have had him take her. Based on new information, including the information from Davern, the case was reopened in 2011. In 2012, the L.A. County Coroner's Office changes the cause of death from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. The new reports casts more questions on the nature of the bruises and abrasions on Woods's body, positing that they likely had to have been on her body before she fell into the water. What if there was a third party involved in the cover-up? The new police investigation looked more closely at Captain Dennis Davern. While he was a key witness, his initial lie to police about the events of the first night raises suspicions. Some speculate that Davern may have been more involved than he initially let on, or that he was pressured by Wagner to change his story. His decision to come forward years later could be seen as a way to get ahead of a story that was already gaining traction in the tabloids. In a 2018 interview, the lead investigator on the reopened case, Detective Ralph Hernandez, stated that Wagner was officially a person of interest. This was a significant shift from the initial investigation. Hernandez has said, "We have not been able to prove that this was a homicide. We have not been able to prove that this was an accident. And we have not been able to prove that this was a suicide. The case is still open and ongoing. This ambiguity is the heart of the mystery." Let's consider another angle. The initial incident could have been an accident, just as the original report stated. Natalie, highly inebriated, could have slipped and fallen while trying to secure the dinghy. However, what if the true crime was not the fall? But what happened afterward? Davern's testimony that Wagner discouraged him from turning on the floodlights or starting the engine is a key piece of this puzzle. If Natalie's drowning was an accident, why would her husband not immediately try to find her, regardless of the noise? Some investigators believe that after she fell, Wagner and Walken may have been in a state of shock or panic, and in their intoxicated state, they made the terrible decision to wait for a while before raising the alarm. This delay could have been fatal for Natalie, who was already suffering from hypothermia. This theory doesn't necessarily accuse anyone of murder, but it does suggest a level of criminal negligence or an attempt to cover up a tragic mistake, which is why the case has remained so difficult to close. This also aligns with the new coroner report that questions the bruises on her body, suggesting they could have been a result of a struggle after she fell, perhaps from trying to get back on the boat. Whether or not he was responsible, Wagner claims to feel responsible in part for her death, in that he did not notice she was gone sooner. Christopher Walken has spoken on the incident as a whole, officially saying, "The people who are convinced that there was something more to it than what came out in the investigation will never be satisfied with the truth. Because the truth is, there is nothing more to it. It was an accident." Yet, Dwayne Rasher, the former lead police investigator on the case, still says, "I can't tell you exactly how she got in the water." In the end, the tragic passing of Natalie Wood will continue to confound the world. The familiar faces involved only add to the mystery. The case of Natalie Wood will remain a puzzle, with too many conflicting accounts and too many secrets left buried. We may never know what truly happened to her that night. The only certainty is that a Hollywood icon's life ended in a way she had feared her whole life, leaving behind a legacy of beauty, talent, and an unsolved mystery that will endure as long as the stars still shine in the night sky.